just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
What's happening, guys? It's time for another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your favourite tutor, Ian Dawson Mackay. Next Level Guy is the go-to men's interview, interest and improvement website where I quiz the experts to find out the hacks, tips, methods and protocols that you can implement in your own life to take it to the next level and live happier, healthier, wealthier, sexier and so much more. Today's guest is Eli Knight. Eli is a BJJ black belt instructor and YouTube coach who has an awesome YouTube channel which showcases Jiu-Jitsu technique videos as well as techniques and concepts to help in the areas of both self-defense and sports BJJ, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for those who don't know. In this interview we cover his story, how to use BJJ for self-defense, how to cut the learning curve in martial arts, how you can be the best student you possibly can be, the benefits of BJJ and so much more. This was a really important interview for me because I was a massive fan of Eli. When I started out in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, his videos really helped me. They helped me understand a lot of the key components and the concepts that classes just weren't getting through my thick head at the time. Now when I go back and watch them, I'm picking up so many amazing little pointers and extra things that I missed the first few hundred times round. You always pick up something new. His videos are that good. If you're starting out in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you need to go and check out his channel. The links are in the show notes. But now, let's get to the interview. I hope you enjoy this as much as I had doing it. If you met somebody in a cliche social setting, so it can be a bar, club, between the floors and a lift, you had to explain to them who you were and what you did as a job. Say you had about 30 seconds. You do quite a unique job. What would you say to them?
It's funny because I just recently came out with a T-shirt that says "Fighty Stuff" on it, and so it's this kind of a retro design. It says "Fighty Stuff," and then if you look in the ring of it, it says striking, grappling, clinch work, jiu-jitsu. It just says all this different stuff, and that's basically it. I mean, so it's not necessarily about self-defense, but that's one of the easiest ways to say it. But I just teach, and I like more than teaching to say sharing, like the information that I have about fighting and self-defense, because I think it's an important thing, not just for somebody to be able to know how to protect themselves in a violent confrontation. That's obviously important, but it's the thing that maybe gets people interested initially, but it's not the thing that keeps them around. It's the fun that you have after that. So that's what I like to try to share with people. And I like to keep things fun, and I like to keep things entertaining, and I like to show people just not to be too philosophical or anything, but just to show people the beauty of training, and just the metaphor that training provides for life and for living. I mean, you're overcoming extremely difficult problems, and you're learning about a physical thing and how it applies to every aspect of life. So the easiest way to say what I do is I teach jiu-jitsu to people, but it falls a little short to say that. So that would be the slightly longer answer for the Cliff's Notes version.
Because it doesn't really incorporate the amount of the way that you make it, the student's life better. You teach them fitness, you teach them how to express their creativity. There's so much encompassing what a coach does, and then you've also got your business, and you've got your channel, and it's a phenomenal what you do. I mean, I initially found you while searching for a few techniques, and I love your channel. When I first started, I couldn't really comprehend a lot of what you were saying because of there was so much detail and different variations and techniques. But as I've started training, I realized how awesome your videos are in terms of the scope, the depth, the variety, and how much you're just doing it off the cuff. You can see that you understand the technique perfectly well. But can we go back to when you were a child? How did you get into jiu-jitsu? Because I was like initially bullied, lost a lot of confidence when I was younger, and as I grew up, I wanted something to get into self-defense, to give my confidence back. But how did Eli become Eli Knight of Knight's Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, it's hard to say. I think that the biggest thing that got me involved with, I would have to say martial arts, because I didn't start out with jiu-jitsu. I started with, because I'm in a small town in Kentucky. And so I always say that my martial arts experience is very geographically challenged. So I had to do what we had available. And, I like every kid, you watch kung fu and karate movies, grew up watching, Van Damme and, Steven Seagal and things like that. And, I wasn't really of the Power Rangers generation, but, just fantasy kind of movie stuff like that. So martial arts was always interesting. Now, but I never really actually, I took some karate classes when I was a kid, but it was, kind of up to my dad to take me, and just didn't really take with me. When I was a teenager, my sister died in an automobile accident, and it was the most traumatic event in my life, probably to date. I mean, there's been some other close ones, but that's probably still the most traumatic thing that I've ever experienced. And I was just lost. I was just lost in life, Aside from that, I also watched my mother go through a very abusive relationship whenever I was young. And those both kind of coincided, and it was just like a really dark place I got to. A friend of mine talked me into going to his Taekwondo class with him. And I was like, it was a good outlet for me. I was always interested in martial arts, and so it was a good outlet for me to go and just be physical and be creative. I was never an athlete. I was never physically gifted at all in any regard. Still, I'm not. It's a lot harder for me. I feel like things don't come natural for me physically. During those Taekwondo classes, I was exposed to other things, and I did a lot of research on my own. I did a lot of whatever resources were available, because we didn't have YouTube back then. This was the early, not even the 90s yet, probably. It was like just on the cusp of turning 1990s. And so, library and martial arts books that I could get my hands on. I was always intrigued by jiu-jitsu and other arts like that. I met up with a man named Jason Hawkins, who was teaching out of the same academy, just in a different class than I was taking. And he was doing something that people weren't really doing at the time, which was cross-training a lot. And he was studying Jeet Kune Do, and he was studying Filipino martial arts. He was pursuing an instructorship under Dan Inosanto. He was already a second-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, but a different style of jiu-jitsu. When the UFC hit around 1993, and I had just started transitioning to studying under Jason, and so I was pursuing my instruction under him for what we call jiu-jitsu, but it had a lot of different influences on it. Well, when we saw this happen, the UFC hit, and of course everybody knows how that turned out for the first several UFCs. It was this scrawny Brazilian guy that was kind of going in
pajamas,
taking guys in pajamas, and it was not what, even to jiu-jitsu guys, quote unquote, it wasn't what we thought jiu-jitsu was. It didn't look like jiu-jitsu that we were doing. So, those turned out very differently than everybody expected, I think. And it turned the martial arts world on its ear. I mean, it flipped everything upside down. So at that point, you either kind of had to buy in to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, or you could, bury your head in the sand and make excuses as to why your training was still superior to that, even if it wasn't incorporating that. Or you could find some kind of middle ground where you were like, I need to at least pay attention to this and incorporate this into my training. We were a little bit more, because we're already jiu-jitsu guys, we were more of we're going to buy into this. So we started to pursue the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu style more. I still kept up with other styles and systems over the years. Mostly, I don't turn too much of a blind eye to anything. I try to keep a good barometer to, or I try to keep a good perspective on what's happening out there, even if it's something that I would initially be kind of opposed to, just on spec. But I try to keep in mind that when I say jiu-jitsu about something, that it's the lens that I'm looking through. It's not that jiu-jitsu is the only good thing to me. It's like that's the lens that I look through to understand how everything else works. So it's more of a philosophical or a mindset kind of thing. So, getting back to the journey of it, it's, we pursued study under Hoist particularly, but whenever he left Gracie Academy and he started his own network, we stuck with him. We were a flagship network, and we've been with him ever since. So I got my blue belt technically from Elio Gracie, and along with some of my other friends, Jason Hawkins, the one that I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. And since then, every stripe and every belt has come directly from Hoist. And now I'm a second degree black belt under him. So that's kind of the development. So it's kind of the arc of the journey to this point. There's a lot missing from that story, but that's as Cliff's notes as I can make it.
I mean, I was very sorry to read about, when I heard about your sister and the issues that your mom had faced. Apologies, that's my pop-ups. It's similar to like when I was dealing, sort of nothing on that kind of scale, but when I lost grandparents, I kind of bottled things up. I didn't know how to deal with it, and I think, like you, martial arts kind of gave me a way to vent it out, but not just to deal with the emotional distress and anger, but to actually find a way to understand it and learn from it, and possibly even evolve from it. I mean, do you see that? Do you see that's where a lot of modern guys are going wrong? That they hit the drink, they do drugs, they get into fights because they don't really know how to deal with it, how to let it out, how to, accept it even.
Sure. I mean, I think that it's inevitable that we're going to experience trauma in our life. It's inevitable that we're going to go through things that we don't have the perfect skill set or toolbox to handle, and we're going to be left kind of like unfettered and trying to figure out what can we use to get past this thing. And most of us are not given that we don't usually have a mentor to stand over us and say, here's how you handle this, and it's great if you do. It's great if you have a close-knit group around you. It's great if you have a good support system of friends and a family to be able to say, hey, we're here for you, and let's figure this out together whenever you experience this trauma. For me, and for like you were saying, whenever it's a family trauma, a lot of times it impacts the entire family. So for you to be there completely for someone else, you're going to have to efface yourself from that too, but you're experiencing that, so it's a difficult thing. So I think the easiest thing to do whenever you are faced with a difficult situation that you have no idea how to deal with is to anesthetize yourself. So what do you do? Drinking, drugs, that's the easiest answer right there. I mean, it's like something hurts, let's kill the pain. Let's try to pour something on top of that pain right there, and to dull it out. But you can constructively deal with pain and trauma, or you can negatively deal with it. And if your only answer is to pour something on top of it that just numbs it or quiets it for a while, well, I mean, you're going to build up a necessity to that. You're going to build up an addiction. You're going to build up a tolerance that you're going to have to continually increase the amount that it takes to quiet that noise. So or you can find some kind of outlet that allows you to exercise the demons that you have, and grow to be a stronger person because of it, and actually develop some kind of system to deal with those things. So the choice is ultimately yours, but
I mean, when I had it, for me, it was when a grandparent died of cancer, and I can remember being in a poor relationship, and all the red flags were there, and I can remember sitting and thinking, no, she's fine, there's nothing wrong with her, because you're getting something good in return. You're getting a something positive. So I can see where people go wrong with that. It took me ages to kind of go, well, she was nuts. But yeah. I mean, she was dealing with her own stuff, and I think this is the thing is, we're in a society where we've got so much technology and so many ways to communicate, but we've forgotten how to speak to one another. We don't really know how to drop in and just say, "Are you all right? Do you need anything? Do you want it?" So we tend to just sit there and go, "Let's go to the bar and drink," because we want to help, but we don't know how to help each other. It's quite sad in a way.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. I think it's a really good point. Like that, we don't. I'm not trying to make that sound like I am better at that, because I'm definitely better at communicating via text message than I am on a phone call. I'm definitely better at answering comments on videos a lot of the time than I am having a genuine conversation face to face with people. And it's I don't like that. I try to be better about that myself. But I recognize that is a shortcoming of it. And you brought up relationships and how that can kind of affect and impact our relationships with each other, especially the close relationships that we have. And I think that's absolutely true. And I think it is a product of the times that we live in, and the ease of technology and communication in one regard is actually like hindering our ability to communicate, and probably the more important aspect of it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. We have to do a lot of self-introspection like that.
Well, when I first started jiu-jitsu, I didn't really understand the differences in jiu-jitsu and the styles and the people that teach it, and sport versus self-defense and combat jiu-jitsu and all this kind of stuff. I just assumed it was a martial art. How did you go about getting into the whole like self-defense side of things? Because very rarely do I see that being advertised now, and that's what I really liked about your materials, was that you were showing how to actually use it. And I was quite low self-esteem and confidence when I moved to the city I'm in now. So I kind of felt, well, if I'm going to go out and start trying to meet girls and meet new people, I wanted to get the confidence to defend myself, but also just to become more confident in general. Yeah. But you kind of focus more on the self side of things rather than the sport jiu-jitsu. So what made you go down that avenue?
Well, it wasn't like, I guess the exposure that I had to it was never really distinguished. I mean, because it was, so early on, and I'm not trying to sound like an old man or anything, but it was quite a while ago that I got into this, and it wasn't as big of a conversation back then. It wasn't so much sport or self-defense. It was Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was promoted as the most effective fighting art. It's about fighting. It's about what happens if you get into a fight. How do you defend yourself? Now, that's a hugely multifaceted question, because context dictates everything as far as that goes. Are we talking about a one-on-one consensual street fight? A mutual combat situation? Are we talking about something that has rules imposed on it? And if we are, then what degree are the rules in play? Is this MMA where there are limited rules? Is this something like combat jiu-jitsu where there's a slightly more stringent, or I'm sorry, slightly more lax rules than there are with a strict BJJ tournament? Is this a BJJ tournament with a gi? So it goes on and on. But to me, like, jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, and it was ultimately a combative art. It was ultimately, like, if you want to go back, and we can have some kind of weird historical debate that I'm not an expert on at all to participate in, but if you talk about like battlefield martial arts, samurai style, we're talking about hand-to-hand combat because you lost your sword maybe, or you lost your spear or whatever you had, or you're off your horse, so then this is where the throws and the locks and the strikes and everything came into play. And so when that was not a necessity anymore, and you can say whether it was because of like the restoration of Japan, or it was because of this or that circumstance, or because of the introduction of guns and all that, it fell out of favor as a combative art. But and I think that you can't really talk about the history of jiu-jitsu without talking extensively about Jigoro Kano, who systematized the Kodokan and really kept jiu-jitsu alive, and in the form of judo especially, and put kind of a training system together that was something that was doable, where you didn't have to cause too much physical damage to your opponent, but you could train as realistically as possible. Now that became a very sportive endeavor. If you look at judo nowadays, there's a lot more rules in judo than there are even in a jiu-jitsu tournament, which is a lot. But he was the man that really kept it alive. So if you look at that, and you talk about the history of how that traveled and who did what, and what role that Maeda played in coming to Brazil, and what presence jiu-jitsu had in Brazil prior to his arrival and after his arrival, what impact the Gracie family had on it. All this stuff leads up to kind of the importance that preservation of reality fighting was placed on jiu-jitsu. And if you really want to talk about fighting in its truest essence, you talk about one person versus one person in hand-to-hand combat. Who has the best system and the best strategy and the best technique set to efficiently defeat that other person. Like, that's the essence of fighting. Now, from there, we can get into 1,000 arguments about, well, jiu-jitsu is great. And I'm going based off of the comments I get on my videos. so it's like jiu-jitsu is great for a one-on-one thing where there's rules involved, and multiple attackers aren't involved. But then what about weapons? What about multiple attackers? What about it's dark outside? What about there's glass and broken bottles on the ground, and there's hypodermic needles discarded that you're going to land on if you go to the ground? And it's just
if someone starts throwing strikes, and jiu-jitsu doesn't stop strikes, and
right, it's just
all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, it gets ridiculous. And now, if most of that is a fallacious argument, and most people who understand the nature of violence and the nature of fighting, and who really want to pursue that and want to get better at fighting, they don't deny the efficacy and the necessity of learning grappling. Learning fighting in a grappling-based environment, and typically that's jiu-jitsu. I mean, that I went through a firearms course. It was actually a close quarters fighting, but it was firearms-based course with Craig Douglas, who's an absolute brilliant man that understands the nature of violence. But you should have him on your show if you can get him on the show. Like, he's an absolute brilliant man to talk to. But I remember him saying during that there was so much emphasis on wrestling and on jiu-jitsu. It's like, if you're going to carry a gun, you better know your jiu-jitsu. Like, that was one of the biggest things that was reiterated over and over again. And absolutely is true. It's if you're going to get into if you're going to be involved in a close quarters physical confrontation, especially if there are weapons involved, then jiu-jitsu is not negated. Jiu-jitsu becomes more necessary, in my opinion.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? Is you hear people saying, it's no use if somebody pulls a knife out, if somebody pulls a bottle. But some of the first lessons I had in jiu-jitsu, like at Gracie Barra, where how to block a fist, how to block a bottle, how to what to do if somebody was using this as a weapon or came up behind, and it's. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it actually gives people a false sense of security, doesn't it? That if they've got a weapon, it means they're safe. But you've seen those things where there's somebody with a gun and somebody with a knife, and they were showing how many times somebody with a knife could actually stab that person by the time they had unhooked their holster, got their gun out, aimed, and it was terrifying. But I think people forget that it's like you said, you have to be able to know how to use your hands on your feet and that before you even comprehend using a weapon. So this is sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry, no, go.
Well, I was just gonna, like, on that point, I was just gonna say that you mentioned something along the lines of the Tooler rule or the Tooler theory, I guess, depending on how you want to talk about the 21-foot rule, where someone drawing their firearm to put shots on target against someone that's drawing a knife that's going to stab them. The old adage is 21 feet was typically the time-tested and proven kind of distance that you needed to be able to, like, draw and get shots on target to be able to stop that threat with the knife coming at you, which has tons of holes and it has tons of issues with it. But it's a good example, though, of whenever people are like, well, if somebody has a knife, I'll just shoot them. If if somebody has this weapon or that weapon, then it doesn't really matter what you know because you're going to die anyway. It's like, maybe, but damn, I mean, it's like if you get into a car wreck, then, you're probably going to get hurt. Is it not worth wearing your seatbelt? Is it not worth having something in place that could save your life,
Because that's what they say about guys is every guy claims they could win a fight. Every guy claims they could get the girl. There's only two universal concepts, and you see that on like every like mass shooting thing in the comments. People are always saying a good guy with a gun could have done this, but never mind the adrenaline pumping, the danger, the smoke, people running around, law enforcement mistaking them for being a bad guy, and I think it's terrifying that we're in this situation, society, but there's nothing we can do about it now. But do you think everybody should be doing a martial art? Everybody should be learning self-defense to kind of remove the chickens from the coop when the fox is roaming, so to speak?
I think that, and regardless if it's jiu-jitsu or whatever, I think there's something to be had, something to be gained from training and learning and studying and physically participating in something that simulates violence, because it's inevitable that all of us are going to encounter violence of some form or fashion in our lives, and it's going to be traumatic, like especially our first experiences with it, and to a degree every experience thereafter. So I think for us to have some experience in that arena of violence is a helpful thing, because it's just part of life. It's even if you're never around violence in your entire life, just the nature of training in combative arts or in combat sports or whatever, you're going to be taken out of your comfort zone, and in a controlled environment, that's always a positive thing, to be taken out of your comfort zone. We grow from being taken out of our comfort zone. We learn something about ourselves. We learn not just like what we're positively capable of, but we also learn about some of those like deeper, darker, or negative aspects of ourselves that we don't really want to confront. So it's Jordan Peterson does a lot of good talks on the nature of that, about looking into the dark elements of us and what we find when we look there, and how we can benefit from looking at that part of us that we don't want to address. We have to address it if we're going to grow from that.
I see a lot of people mentioning him. I'm going to have to try to get him on, because there's a whole side of our sort of human psyche. I think when I interviewed Josh Barnett yesterday, and he was talking about the difference about our psychologies and why we fight and why we need the need to compete and stuff like that, and you realise that to us it's just like maybe a hobby or exercise, but there is actually a need for it, like a physiological need in a part of our brain kind of craves it from our forefathers and stuff, maybe. And so how do you take a jiu-jitsu thing that works in the hall, works in the mats, and how do you adapt it for fighting in the street? Can you take every single every kind of technique that you would normally learn, say under the Gracie Barra curriculum, and adapt it to fight in the street? I mean, do you think are there ever parts of jiu-jitsu that don't work?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, especially, I mean, I absolutely love the sport of it, and I just taught over the past couple of days. I've taught some lessons on De La Riva guard and on some lapel guard stuff. We actually were discussing the difference in worm guard and squid guard, and so like these extremely sportive things. And if you watch a lot of, especially in this year's Worlds, there was a lot of lapel play. I mean, even more so than in past years, which was always a lot of like a skirt and lapel like guard work. And it's really cool to watch, and it's a really cool facet of the game. But I mean, it's really difficult for me. I would really have to make a lot of concessions and excuses to really be able to say that's applicable in like a street fight, But
yeah,
here's the thing: that the foundation is laying at the same place, whether you go like way far into left field of sport, or you dismiss that stuff. It's there still has to be fundamental aspects of movement, of understanding of your body, of structure, of coordination, of of how do you break someone's balance, how do you disrupt somebody's structure, how do you manipulate that person energetically. It all still applies. Energetically, everything is going to be a push or a pull motion at a core base level. How do you manipulate that? How do you fork somebody between two undesirable outcomes, and you have answers for both of those, and then you see which path they take, and you can take advantage of that. So I mean, these things all apply to fighting across the board, and that's why I don't have a problem with people referring to jiu-jitsu matches, even the sportiest ones, as fights, which that's a kind of a contentious statement. Whenever you hear people, it's like jiu-jitsu matches aren't fights because you don't get to do this, you don't get to do that. It's like, yeah, but man, nobody has a problem with calling a boxing match a fight, and I don't either. It's fine, call it a fight. But look at how many rules there are in a boxing match versus how many rules there are in jiu-jitsu. And I think you'll find there's a lot more rules in boxing than there are in jiu-jitsu as far as fighting is concerned. But I mean, that's not I don't feel like that's the most popular opinion, but I feel like I can argue it fairly well. So getting back to your original point, though, as far as can you adapt everything in jiu-jitsu to whatever context, there's a lot of cross application. There's a lot of modalities of jiu-jitsu that apply to both situations, but no, not everything can apply. There has to be modification. There has to be consideration for striking and for all that stuff that people like to harp on in the comment section about multiple attackers and weapons and yada yada yada. So,
because that's the thing, is you see these guys that say, they pull guard, and I think we had Professor Lagarto come up, and he was saying, yeah, somebody tried to pull a guard on a guy, tried to steal out his bag, and the guy just hit him in the head with a bit of wood nearby and stole his watch, and he was just like, it's fine to do guard and all that kind of stuff, but you're opening yourself up to a lot of danger. So, but how do we? I mean, I loved your videos that you look at, like using somebody's t-shirt or using your jacket to control somebody. But what would you say to the argument that a lot of mothers put forward, that they say, you should never get in a fight anyway. You should know the situation's bad before you leave it. What's the kind of situational red flags that somebody's doing that that you could prepare you that you need to use jiu-jitsu? Because there's a lot of great throws, there's a lot of great chokes that you can use in those situations, but how do you know you're going to have to use them? Have you found sort of universal concepts that stand out for you?
I don't know about universal, because I mean, there's as soon as you kind of come up with good answers for something like that, you find the exception to the rule. I mean, it's I was watching a video the other day that someone sent me, and it was these two ladies who were just walking down the sidewalk, and everything looked completely normal, and this guy was walking in front of them and just walked right in between them, even though they were close together, and simultaneously punched both of them in the chest. And one was an older lady, and she fell down on the ground, and when the video ended, I had no idea the damage that she had sustained, and the guy just kept on walking. There was no preemption. There were very limited contextual clues about that he was going to do something violent like that. I do think that a bit more situational awareness could have been issued on the side of the ladies. They could have noticed a couple things, but I think situational awareness is it's maybe one of the most important things, but it's not everything. The crazy stuff can happen. There was a shooting just today at a Walmart in Texas. It happened just a few hours ago. There's as many as 22 injured or dead. And this happened just. There's another one this week. There was a shooting in a Walmart here in the States, and it's the crazy things that are very unexpected just happen. So you have to. It's not about situational awareness. Yes, absolutely, it's important. Notice sketchy people. Regardless of how politically incorrect it is, profile people in a situation where you happen to be, in the context where you happen to be. If somebody looks scarier to you, you don't have to have the politically correct reasons why that person looks scary to you. If they're giving you an uneasy feeling, categorize that, take inventory of that, and maybe efface yourself from that situation at the first possible time that you can.
That's what I liked about your older videos. You know, you went into a thing of, if somebody just comes up to you close or you're in a crowded situation, because situational awareness is great, but if you're in a club and somebody bumps into you out of nowhere, you don't have the option to sort of sit there and go, okay, I'll walk away in that. It can just happen, like you said, you know, if you're in a mall or somewhere like that, or if you're in a shop and there's too many people around you, you might be in a situation where it's life or death. You've got to use it there and then.
Absolutely. Well, play this game. You know, I mean, and these are the type of things that are difficult to drill. We're difficult for several reasons. One of them is just because we're uncomfortable doing it. It's just awkward. It's just uncomfortable and awkward. But role play this drill where you and a training partner or a couple of training partners are standing around, and your job or the person's job that you're approaching is to make sure that they maintain a safe distance from you. Safe being that they can't reach you from arm's length to be able to like strike you or something like that, or tackle you maybe. So that's the distance that you have to maintain. And then you, as the encroacher or the approacher, walks up in a hurried manner, yelling obscenities, saying, "Hey, you fucked my girlfriend. I found you. I'm going to do this to you and this and that." And see how close you can get before that person has a chance to even raise their hands, or before they have a chance to even stop you in your tracks with any kind of question, with any kind of statement verbally, you know, or see how off-put they are in that controlled environment, knowing that you're still their friend and you're not actually going to attack them. You know, see like what happens like that. I mean, it's startling to know that. And then you put that into a real context that could really actually happen. It could be a complete, you know, case of mistaken identity. Somebody thinks that you're the person who they saw hit their car and drive off, or you're the person that somebody told them, was sleeping with your girlfriend or whatever. It's, you know, there's all the situational awareness in the world, can't stop you from being blindsided in a context like that.
Or it could be just somebody just looking for trouble, you know, had a falling out with a girlfriend. And I found myself in that situation where just because I was 6 foot plus, I think it kind of stopped the guy escalating it. But that was back when I wouldn't know what to do. Whereas now, I think I can use my physicality a bit more. I can use some of the techniques I know if it came to it. But you mentioned in a Gracie Barra, I think it was Gracie Barra Rules podcast you did, where you were talking about
Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks. Mm-hmm.
That's the one. It's air, blood and pain chokes, and you know how a lot of the moves that they teach in self-defense fall under these sort of three categories. Could you go into a little bit about, because not a lot of people understand the different kind of chokes and how they're sort of utilized, you know, like is there a kind of ranking system in your opinion? Because I train, I kind of appreciate it, but for somebody who's new to it, you know, what's the difference between an air choke, a blood choke, and a pain choke, and which is the most useful ones?
Sure. Yeah. I think the point that I was talking about specifically with chokes was, I was talking about the elements of a choke, and every choke has three aspects to it, and every choke is going to be painful to some degree, some more than others. Every choke is going to affect the wind, your ability to breathe, and every choke is going to affect the blood flow of the arteries surrounding the neck. And the point that I was trying to make is that I was the point that I was trying to make was that we want to focus on the blood, because the blood is going to have the most effective and most efficient response to incapacitate the person. Whereas like with the air, you can armor your windpipe or your trachea better with the muscles of the neck. With the pain is kind of relative, and pain is not really reliable, depending on the ability of the person to withstand pain and the context of the situation and adrenaline and all these things. So the one that we want to focus on is actually the we want to see what can get the cleanest blood choke for that. If that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I used to always look at it was like there's air chokes where you would try to shut off the air to the brain. Then there was the blood, the blood one the blood to the brain, and then there's ones where you would try to stop the person breathing as much. But there was the pain one where you would use like kimuras or key locks or stuff, to kind of incapacitate them.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Well,
mean,
sorry,
I think that no, it's I think that that's whenever it comes to pain, I used to say pain is not reliable. I say it's less reliable because you don't know, depending on, in training, I can get somebody to tap from something that's painful because there's not as much on the line, there's not as much adrenaline involved, there's not, all the different aspects of it. This person is my training partner, and they're going to recognize something as being painful, and they're going to like give up to that. Whereas in more of a competitive environment or an actual fight, that's not going to be as nearly as reliable.
So what would you use? Like, say you had to develop a framework for this. If you were to look at techniques to, say you had to pick, say, 3 techniques that the average Joe on the street should learn. Would that be a case of looking at like guillotines, rear naked chokes, hip throw, or is there several things like kimuras, other chokes, other things that everybody should have in the arsenal, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that it's tricky. It's very tricky. If we're talking about jiu-jitsu techniques for a street fight, then I think that joint submissions they should be a second or third tier. I think positional considerations should be above everything else. You being able to take somebody to the ground, secure a position, or let's not say take them to the ground, just for argument's sake. If people say, well, you shouldn't go to the ground in the street fight because whatever reason. But let's say if you have to understand how to fight on the ground, understanding how the positions work and the transitions between positions, how to escape bad positions, how to capitalize on good positions, and how to upgrade from position to position. That's first, because that's going to allow you the ability to control that person structurally, even if they're more physical than you are. If you have a better understanding of how to move around on the ground, then you can take somebody who's more athletic and you can dominate that person because they don't understand how to efficiently move. So that's first. I think that if you're looking to incapacitate the person, things like chokes, like blood chokes, I think would be the highest tier, because nobody can continue to fight once they're unconscious. Not well anyway. So you think like that would be the first level of trying to incapacitate someone. Now, the next level, I would say, possibly, we could argue whether that would be joint manipulation, looking for submissions like arm locks and things like that, like Kimura and Americana and whatever, or striking. For me, striking is kind of a filler. My opinion about striking in a fight on the ground is that striking should enhance your ability to transition from position to position. It should close spaces that are open that aren't useful for you. It should open spaces that are closed that aren't useful for you, if that makes sense. Whenever you get too caught up in the strike to be the end-all, be-all technique, then you tend to lose a little bit of focus of the position. You make yourself a little bit easier to escape from, or a little bit easier for the other person to upgrade the position because you aren't paying as close attention as you need to be for it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, because that's the thing, isn't it? Is a lot of people say, oh, jiu-jitsu guys just pull to guard and go to the ground, but that's not true at all, No,
it's not. I think, anybody who thinks that maybe there are jiu-jitsu guys out there who are so incompetent as to think that, you're going to, jump guard in a street fight and try to go for a berimbolo and then, try to take the guy's jacket and wrap it up like a lasso guard and do all this stuff. Maybe there are people that think that. I haven't met any of them. I think that most people with a brain, that even if they play more sport jiu-jitsu, they know there are certain things that they don't need to do on concrete against a striking opponent. Mr. Jiu-Jitsu, who's a very controversial, kind of character in the jiu-jitsu community, but he says a lot of good things, and there's a famous meme that he said, and he said, a sport BJJ guy will still kick your ass in a fight, and I think ultimately that's what it boils down to. It's like what is it that you're training that's so deadly and so dangerous that you think that this incompetent BJJ guy that's just going to pull guard on you in the street, that you can just like dismantle him so well. And I think that most of those statements about, well, a BJJ guy would just do this or that, those are made by people who are completely ignorant of what BJJ is about what jiu-jitsu is about. They've seen it maybe. They've maybe seen a lot of it, but they haven't trained. They haven't gotten on the mats. I refuse to believe that to any extensive degree. Nobody is going to trash talk jiu-jitsu like that if they've actually experienced it. I find that hard to believe.
Well, I mean, I get the whole time as somebody that's maybe done a couple of boxing classes, they think that means they could destroy jiu-jitsu because
right.
There's no way you could possibly close a gap and stop them from punching. There's no way you could possibly throw them or get behind them or anything of that nature, or use their extended arm to break it with multiple of arm locks. I find it hilarious that it's fake confidence that people, they don't understand what people are able to do. There's the drunk guy that throws at a bouncer who's got years of experience in taekwondo and jiu-jitsu and is a black belt in karate. It's so commonplace now for people to get more training that I don't know where this sort of stupidity still exists. It is scary, because you never know who you could be fighting if you go down that road.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the thing. I think that when people tend to put down, when you see people make these kind of comments, typically it's made by people who have a severe lack of training anyway, or they've just dabbled in something. They feel very insecure about the level of training that they've reached, and they worry. They're extremely worried about, oh my God, what would I do if somebody actually took me to the ground and got mounted on top of me? How would I get out of that? What would I do? And rather than remedying that with going out and taking some jiu-jitsu classes or learning about that environment in which they're uncomfortable, they would rather sit behind a keyboard and criticize somebody else teaching these kind of things, or somebody else examining these kind of things or doing these kind of things. And I think it happens on the other end of it too. I mean, now I don't want to just demonize everybody who's not jiu-jitsu. This is very important. I think a lot of jiu-jitsu guys get very chauvinistic. They get very blindly patriotic to jiu-jitsu, and I've been there, and I would definitely say that I have tendencies to fall back into those mentalities too. You can't go out and think, well, I would just all I have to do is just close the distance, grab you, drag you to the ground, and choke you out. Maybe, but you definitely need to understand the nature of striking too, and you need to understand other things that can happen in a fight in a no-rule situation, and you need to think about situational awareness. You need to think about context. You need to think about other environmental factors. That's very important, and that's the aspect of jiu-jitsu people these days that I worry about, because I am a jiu-jitsu guy more than anything else, and I worry about people losing the effectiveness of it and the efficiency of it and the reality of it, and just thinking that it's far superior and that's all they need, and that they would just handle any situation easily, and that. I think it's something that needs to be watched and monitored.
Yeah, because that is the thing, is people kind of think, oh well, that'll do. The one art will stop every single attack, every single situation, and you're in for a very rude awakening if you think that. But I mean, how you do teach a lot of law enforcement courses, and you teach these guys how to control people and stuff. But I mean, how do you teach somebody in that situation? It could be a young girl who's never had any training at all. It could be a guy who's been bullied his whole life and isn't used to using their physical nature or aggressive side to control somebody. How do we go about learning how to control somebody that's coming over and swinging? You don't want to hurt the person, but you want to restrict them and just kind of control them till they calm down. How do you even go about teaching somebody like that?
It's difficult. I mean, I think that's why I feel like honestly this art, this system, this style was not meant to be taught to large masses of people at once. When you see packed gyms and everything, it's cool and all, and as a academy owner, you want to have that. You want to have a full mat of people and in there in training and everything. But the best way that this can be conveyed is one-on-one, and it's not just because you're able to get across the details better in a conversation one person to one person, but you're able to recognize that person's learning style. You're able to recognize their physical abilities and limitations, and their needs to be able to convey the information in the most palatable way for that person. And that's the difficult thing, because when you just put a blanket lesson out there and say, okay, this is the technique, this is how you do it, this is how you train it, whatever, well, then you're going to run into a lot of exceptions in that. So I mean, ultimately the best way is to take in a student and work with that person one-on-one, understand what that person's capable of doing and what they need to improve on and everything else intimately with that person, to be able to get them to where they need to be. Otherwise you're relegated to teaching something to a group of people, and you're going to have a high, the lowest common denominator is what you're going to have to teach to in that environment. You're going to have somebody who's completely having a difficult time with that technique or that situation or that whatever thing that you're working, and you're going to have somebody who catches on to it so easily that they assimilate it, and then they need to move on past that. They need more. So there's no easy answer, but teaching to the lowest common denominator in the room is typically the best way to approach it. I feel like putting in the details that if the person that's the most inept in the room, they don't get them, they're still going to get at least a decent enough framework to be able to apply that to what they have available for them. And then the person who is able to reach that in the room, they're going to be interested enough and kept interested on the basic aspect of that technique to be able to get something out of it, even though it's something that's more palatable to a beginner.
Yeah, I love that, because it kind of explains why at the moment, like, I'm a blue belt now, and I got my blue belt, was it like in December last year? Just December past. And the number of times I've sat there and I thought, why are we still going back over this? And I realise it's for the people who are just coming in, where blue belts and above are expected to learn about it yourself. You're to find your own game, to keep developing and pushing from that point and kind of exploring it in your own point. Yeah. And I like the way you kind of put it, because it certainly makes more sense to people who come in and start thinking, oh, well, my coach is just rubbish, I'm not learning. It's your journey to go from there,
I think a good coach, though, should be able to put enough into it and be able to read the room. I mean, if I have a room full of, say an average class is maybe like 15 to 20 people, and if I have that group in there, I should be able to read the room and kind of tell, just generically at least, what's the environment. And so I try my best. If I'm showing the most basic, like a trap and roll escape from mount, I'm showing upa escape. I want to at least make sure that I mention a detail or two that I feel like the highest rank in that room doesn't know. It's just to see if they're paying attention, to see if they've zoned out and they're like, oh, we're working on this again. Okay, whatever, and then they just kind of, their eyes glaze over and wait until, because I see that happen a lot. I've seen that happen in classes I've been in and classes that I've taught, that people see what I start to show or see what's starting to be shown, and then they just kind of lose focus because it's like, oh, I already know this one. I've seen it when Hoist does a seminar. I see eyes glaze over and it's like, oh, we're working on this again. It's like, man, I've been learning from that guy for over 2 decades, and he can still show something I've seen him teach 100 times, and I'll still get a little detail. It may be something tiny, but I'll still get something out of that because I'm looking really hard. I know that I can't do that move as well as he can. So even if he doesn't explain it perfectly, I'll watch closely to see like what's that new detail I'm going to get from this, And there's almost always something. So, I think that it's a very dangerous thing, and this is something that is difficult to impress upon people whenever they're studying, is that find a new way all the time to fall in love with that technique all over again. I equate it like my daughter doesn't have a new technique for hugging me, but I still love every single hug that I get from her. So it's like, treat the techniques like that. Like love it for what it is. Don't hate it for what it's not.
I actually love that, because when I first started, it was difficult for me to kind of go, you get your ego and you start going, oh yeah, I've done that, I know that, why are we doing this again and again? But it's like you're saying, is that since I went back to training with a fundamental class, you relearn little things and it fixes your technique, and it makes you excited because you get people coming and asking you questions, and you start changing how you start coaching as well in a way, so you start getting that buzz from that. But you also start noticing the little movements, because you can understand the concepts better. You can understand what the coach is doing and the movement patterns. When we've got 2 fantastic assistant coaches, and I think I've completely learned everything again just from a couple of classes with them, because they really go into the basics. They like drill and drill on the fundamentals. I think it's like, is it Hoyce and is it Kurt or Sander, and they're all saying they can win championships with just the fundamentals. If you can do it, you do a thing 5,000 times, it becomes muscle memory. And is there something that you've adapted to your training schedule, that has made your skill development like shorten in comparison to somebody else who's like been training the same amount of time as you? Is it your focus on the fundamentals? Is it your self-defense, which has made you realize the chaff and roll and compete with people in a kind of self-defense approach? Or what's made you so successful?
Well, first of all, like beyond all that, like I'm nothing special. Like I'm not going to be on a competitive stage with an Abu Dhabi champion. There's a very different approach with that. And if I wanted to compete like in a few weeks, then I would have to like really change a lot of things about my competition schedule. If I wanted to fight in several months, then I would have to change a lot of things about my approach to it. But I try to maximize what I get out of my training every time that I get to train. So I train typically. I don't have but maybe 1 or 2 days that I don't train. If that during the week, and that's a lot of times that's because of travel. But I try to get in and I try to do the training that I can when I can to the best degree that I can. And a lot of that depends on your training partners and everything else, and your schedule and your physicality and where you're at right now. But I have the fortune, the good fortune to I've had a lot of time to be able to learn what I need to do to maximize my training time. So it's I need to make sure that I'm rolling plenty, and that to me is one of the biggest cornerstones of everything. So regardless if I'm gonna be doing more self-defense or more sport, or what my lessons for the week look like and what I need to be focused on, or if I have a seminar coming up or whatever, or a course that I'm teaching, I still need to be rolling, because rolling to me makes all the connections. Even if we're just rolling in the gi, no strikes, not even that big of a emphasis on self-defense or whatever, we're just rolling me and a partner. Being in that moment and having that connection and learning, like feeling out those positions, transitions, how can I make this position more solid and more stable? How can I corrupt his structure better? How can I manage my structure better? How can I hunt this submission in a more secure way, in a more efficient way? How can I make everything more efficient constantly? That translates across the board. Then I can isolate segments of that and go back and be like, okay, well let's add some elements into this. Let's involve strikes now. Let's throw a knife into this and see how that completely dismantles the entire thing. So that to me is the biggest gauge of managing everything in jiu-jitsu contextually.
That's why I love your channel, because you don't just show the technique and just go right by. You kind of go into it deep. You show how you, by maneuvering in certain ways, is going to affect somebody. What would happen if, like you said, throw in a weapon? What would happen if somebody did this? You answer the kind of questions that the beginners don't know they needed to ask, where the blue belts are going to ask. You you can see the level of experience and the technical expertise that you have, and that's what it's one of the best channels going. And I mean, I've watched so many different ones when I first started, and I keep coming back to yours because I get so much every single time I watch a video over and over, and each time I'm picking out something else and I'm seeing the different movements. Your content is fantastic, but what do you think about the accessibility of YouTube? Like all these guys who maybe haven't got that level of skill, shall we say, who are only there just to make money.
Sure. Yeah.
Should there be a grading system that allows them?
I don't know. I mean, it's like, first of all, like, thank you for everything you said about my channel and about my teaching. Like, that's really, I really appreciate all that, because it's, I think everybody like second guesses themselves a lot. And so I definitely, that means a ton to me to hear those kind of things. As far as like everybody, this is the dysfunction of social media in general, right? I mean, I could get onto a political forum right now and discuss like foreign policy, and ostensibly I'm in the same comment section with people with political science degrees who have worked with the United Nations and stuff, and I have zero qualifications to be able to have that conversation with somebody. But because of the structure of social media, I get an equal voice in that comment section. So that starts to go to people's heads, and so on the end that you're talking about, yeah, someone can get on right now onto YouTube and start up a channel, and you see, typically if we're all doing the same structure of videos, then the cream should rise to the top. You should see, just based on someone's movement, or somebody's ability to explain the technique, or somebody's ability to break things down into approachable form for everybody, that should stand out. The problem with that, though, is that I could make a viral video tomorrow. I promise I could. All I have to do is come up with the right clickbait title, make something very sensational for a thumbnail for the video, promote it in the most dishonest ways possible. It's not hard, but when you try to do things with some modicum of ethical integrity, then it becomes a little harder. I don't know how to remedy that. People are gonna take the shortcuts, every shortcut imaginable. And I've gotten to points whenever I was thinking about doing a title for a video, and I'm like, man, it's a little clickbait-ish right there. Now, it's okay if it's a little like that, if you can explain it. You see some people who do a really good job. I think of Shane Faison. He does a good job. He's got some very clickbait titles and clickbait thumbnails on some of his videos, but as soon as, not very long into the video, you'll see that he explains away why he titled it that. He didn't just try to lure you in just so he can get that view count, or he can get that subscriber out of you. But I think that the biggest thing is for people just to remain intellectually honest with what they're doing, try to uphold the integrity of what they're doing. And I think that will hopefully shine through, more than anything else. But there's no way to, I think there's no way to really stop it. I think any measure that we take, though, the thing that scares me, that worries me, is any measure that's taken to try to ensure that people don't manipulate and that don't, the right people are doing the right things. It gets a little bit dangerous with the censorship aspect of it, and then the other people who are trying to do the right things tend to suffer for that,
Yeah, it's one of those kind of, social media is meant to bring us together, and we've ended up creating a way of doing it that is actually creating massive wedges, and is it it's the Kruger, I can't remember the exact name of it, it's something Kruger effect.
Yeah, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
That's the one, and it shows into it. It's the loudest people are usually the ones that know the less about it, and people who do know, who could change people's opinions and teach them the right way, end up just going, I'm not going to bother, I'm not getting into an argument.
Yeah, and there's a quote along with that I like a whole lot, and it was from Robert Pirsig. and I always paraphrase it. I don't know the exact quote, but I think it's from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. But it says, no one is screaming from the top of the mountains that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. Nobody's fanatical about something for which there's no doubt. Usually the people who are the most fanatical about a viewpoint tend to be the ones who are the most doubtful of that viewpoint and most insecure about that, and they're not being allowed to convince everybody else as much as they're being allowed to reinforce their own opinion. So it is that Dunning-Kruger effect that, like people that are so convinced that their way is the best way, that they're gonna just kind of shit on everyone else's viewpoint for that. So.
Because we've all got those ones in the gym, don't we, who come in and you're the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world, and they could easily smash everybody, but you notice they never roll with the higher belts. They always roll with like the new ones and the guys like the young girl that they know they can smash, because it keeps them feeling confident in themselves, but they never want to really kind of push themselves. And I think that's the greatest thing about jiu-jitsu. It's got that evolution aspect that it allows you to really push yourself and take your philosophy, your way of training, development, the way you look at yourself to the next level. Excusing the pun. I mean, we've been going on for over an hour. I can't believe it. I feel like we've just touched the surface. Are you okay to do a few more? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Well, something that I really struggle with myself is the ability to use my aggression. I mean, I'm 6'3", muscular, strong guy, Highland built, worked with animals, all that sort of stuff. But I've always been brought up to be taught that, you're the big giant, you don't know your own strength, and to watch out for everybody. So I still find it difficult when I'm rolling with somebody to switch on the killer instinct, I suppose you could call it. And I've noticed a lot of new white belts mention that too, is they're not sure how to. You're not trying to kill somebody in training, but you're trying to control them and use the technique. How did you learn how to do that?
I had a different, had kind of the opposite experience of you, probably, because when I started in jiu-jitsu, I was very scrawny, very weak. Like I mentioned before, I was very non-athletic kind of kid. So I didn't really have those as options. I didn't really have like a lot of physical aggression and the ability to smash or anything like that, or the size or whatever. But I've over time, my body has changed. My ability has changed, obviously, and I've worked with a lot of people who I've seen go through that same kind of challenge on both ends of it. This is something kind of interesting that I've seen more successful. Typically, when you have somebody come in who's bigger, stronger, more aggressive, wants to smash, wants to use their strength, or you have somebody who comes in as very passive and very light and wants to just content to play like things and allow themselves to get bent into pretzels and everything else. Those two opposite ends, I think that a lot of times, myself included, I think instructors tend to try to figure out ways to balance them out and try to get them back towards center. But if you kind of envision it as like the Newton's cradle, like those silver clacky ball things, like you kind of have to go to the opposite end of the spectrum. So you have to take that big, strong, heavy, smashy guy, and you have to get him to experience what it's like to play using as little energy as possible, And I'm not saying try to transform him into that, but make him experience that, because that, to me, what I've seen is that's been a lot more effective in balancing out his ability to approach, the situation, so rolling and everything else, with and be able to put a muffler or be able to put some kind of like regulator on the amount of energy and strength and effort that he uses whenever he's experienced what it's like to be completely passive, completely soft, And on the other end of it, now that's actually the easier one, in my opinion. Taking somebody who is on the other end of that, typically because they don't have that as an option to play bigger, stronger, heavier smashing. But if you can get that person, though, to play extremely aggressive sometimes, and you have to do this in a controlled environment, you have to do this with somebody who's obviously got a higher skill set that can let them do this. But that tends to have the biggest effect on changing their approach to it, on giving them the ability to have multiple options as far as energies go in their game, rather than just trying to tone it down or tone it up. You know,
because that's the thing, isn't it? In self-defense situations, it's fine teaching somebody how to do things, but if they've never been allowed to let that side of themselves out, or to accept it, or to utilize it, they don't know how to actually start it. A lot of times people who know what to do don't even get a chance. They're knocked out before they even get a chance to kind of do their training, because they're not used to how to control somebody physically and to get into that position. It's a weird one. It's something I struggled with at the start. I'm a lot better now, but I was always the kind of... It was strange to have people in that close to me, and like I wasn't used to it. Sometimes I phase out and I'm in my head thinking about something at work, and then all of a sudden somebody launches themselves at you and you forget. People are there to choke you out, to tap you, it quickly gets you back in the moment, and that's what I love about jiu-jitsu. You're back in the moment. You ain't got the choice to kind of dilly-dally out your head. But
that's probably the most that's probably the best thing about jiu-jitsu training. I can't think of anything better than having something like that. And I mean, I guess whatever you can have in your life that does that for you is great, but jiu-jitsu just tends to do it in such a dramatic way. You can't be too disconnected from the moment. You know, if you do, you're going to pay for it. And karma is instant in jiu-jitsu too. That's another good thing about it. So it's like whenever if you're not completely present in the moment, then, you suffer, and it's pretty immediate, and it's pretty bad. So it's one of those things that makes you, it gives you the practice of drawing yourself back into the present moment. And that's one of the most difficult things to do, especially in modern times where there's so many distractions and so many concerns and worries, and we're constantly trying to multitask or whatever.
Yeah, because I can still remember coming into some roles when I first started, and my head would go down after the first one if somebody tapped me or beat me, or and my ego was so bad when I first started. I was thinking of it in terms of winning or losing, not did I develop, not did I have fun. And I would go in and I would sometimes come away on a Friday, and I would still be annoyed about it, thinking about it on Monday morning. And it was amazing. I couldn't believe, but that's the thing. I'd rather go to my deathbed knowing that I'd tried it than regretting it. And I think that's the stage. There's different levels, isn't there? And it's what they say, white belts, you don't know what you don't know. Blue belts, there's a lot you don't know. For purple belts, you start trying to learn the things you don't know, and then is it brown belt? No, I can't remember. Is it brown belt something else? Then black belt, you've only just started learning jiu-jitsu, and then you have to start again.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think with jiu-jitsu it really imposes that even more, more dramatically than. And I don't want to speak out of turn and say that other martial arts are not like this. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of martial arts like that, but typically with jiu-jitsu, because it took so long to get to that black belt level, you realize that you've still got a long ways to go. Like, that's not the top of the mountain at all. It's like it's just a new course on your journey. Honestly, I mean, it's definitely a huge accomplishment, but you are scratching the surface. Whereas it's been historically and kind of traditionally represented as the black belt is like the master level of other arts. It's not necessarily like that in jiu-jitsu. It's like just now you're expected to kind of take personal ownership over your development a little bit more so than maybe you were before.
Well, it's something that you're very good at, it's like talking in front of the camera and explaining the techniques, and you've got a very great coach way of doing things, and I'd love to come and train with you sometime. But what's your take on the people now who are getting into jiu-jitsu mainly because the likes of Russell Brand, Demi Lovato, this sudden surge of celebrities taking up jiu-jitsu, and how would you say if you had them all lined up, what would you say to them to start becoming the best student they can be? How can they learn jiu-jitsu properly and not just do it because their idol is doing it, but really learn it and be a great student?
Yeah, I mean, I I think that it can be a very good thing, when you see somebody like Russell Brand or Demi Lovato or Ashton Kutcher or whatever celebrity here or there like doing jiu-jitsu. I'm happy to see it on one hand because it's drawing awareness to jiu-jitsu, and it's getting it out there like, hey, I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu, but this person that I really like and this celebrity that I really like what they do is doing it, and they're talking highly about it, so I'm going to go check it out. So that's a positive thing for the growth of it. But there is the counter argument to be made for, well, it can kind of cheapen it because now it's a trendy thing. Now it's just like, it's cool because this cool person's doing it, and then I'm going to go out and I'm going to like take a few classes and do some selfies in my gi and talk about how awesome jiu-jitsu is, and it turns it into like CrossFit. It's like, if I have to post about every training session and I have to make it look like I'm doing more than I am, that's a little negative for for the proliferation of it, and mostly because that's going to tend to fizzle out, and whenever I don't want to see it. There's nothing wrong with it being trendy, but the problem with trends is that trends tend to pass, and I don't like to see that, So I would probably take somebody who's joining because they've been a lifelong fan of everything that Demi Lovato does, and now she's doing jiu-jitsu, and they're going to be like, I want to be like Demi. I want to do what Demi's doing, so I'm going to go out and join my local jiu-jitsu club and take some classes. Say, separate the thing that person does from that person. That's the best thing we can do with all of our heroes, right? I mean, yeah, I still think Kobe Bryant is probably one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Michael Jackson made some of the greatest pop songs of all time. Bill Cosby did some of the funniest stand-up of all time. So did Louis C.K. and so did Kevin Spacey. I think is still a brilliant actor. Like whether or not these people were sexual deviants or whatever kind of other crime they were convicted of or whatever, Mike Tyson's still one of the greatest boxers of all time. Separate the thing from the person. You don't kill your heroes as soon as you can. I think is something very important.
Now would seem a great time for a quick break. I just want to give you a quick note about my affiliates that are available on the website. I've set up some awesome deals with some amazing companies. You know the drill. If you go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, that's www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates if you're listening to this. If you're on the website itself, you can either click the link through the show notes, or if you click on affiliate deals in the blue ribbon at the top of the menu, you can go straight to my affiliate wonderland. There are so many special offers here. There's listener exclusive deals and there's discount codes available. There really is something here for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're buying for yourself, a special occasion, for somebody at Christmas, etc. You can find out whatever you need here. There's a lot of inspiring companies and interesting products, and there's plenty of things you might not have seen before. There really is something there for every occasion, like Secret Santa, birthdays, Christmases, and it's a perfect time to do your Christmas shopping because you can get a lot of good benefits at the moment. There's companies like Onnit, Amazon, MeUndies, Barbell Apparel, Dollar Shave Club. There's companies who are helping you with dating, with sporting equipment, with tactical gear, outdoor equipment, gadgets, and so much more. If you need it, it's probably there. If it's something you didn't even know you're interested in, it's probably there. There's something there for everybody. It doesn't matter what kind of interest they're in. If you're into improving your sex life, there's stuff there. If you're into improving your dating, there's stuff there. If you like camping and hiking, there's stuff there. There's sporting equipment, there's accessories for anything and everything. Simply go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and enjoy. Please note, I know this is quite a topic that everybody's concerned about. I don't get any information on you or your purchases. All I receive is a small commission from the business as a thank you for sending you to shop with them. When we do the affiliate links, we do not get any information on you, your preferences, your shopping, etc. All your data is secure. The company just sends us a small commission as a thank you for driving you towards them to shop with. Now, this doesn't affect the price you pay, but it does help me with the money to then go and develop and expand the podcast, and also to market it better and get better and better guests. So I'd like to say a massive thank you if you've used my links and for taking the time to spend and listening to my podcast. It really helps me make the podcast a better site, a better listen, and a better quality by getting better mics, etc. So I cannot thank you enough for all the support. If you have a chance, please leave a review or a comment on the site. It really helps me market it, attract new listeners, and also get better and better quality guests. I really appreciate your support. Keep listening and enjoying it. I love doing it, and I'd love to hear what you think. So please, if you get a chance, leave a review, leave comments, and if you're feeling generous, I would appreciate if you could use my affiliates anymore. I would do this regardless, so enjoy. Now let's get back to the interview. That's the thing, isn't it? Is we forget that just because somebody does something, they immediately says, "Oh no, they're terrible at everything," and you think, "Well, no." You know, it's like Chris Benoit, the wrestler, was one of the greatest wrestlers in the world up to that point, and still probably is.
Sure.
But he did something horrific. But it's still, if you take away him as a performer, like as Paul Heyman once said, best in the world.
Yep.
But you look at him as a person, he's scum.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's this. I don't like this kind of thing of I'm doing it because somebody told me it, or somebody. Fair enough, somebody recommended it, but I'm doing it because I want to be like somebody.
Right.
You know, fair enough, get the inspiration for it, but do it for you, because I get so much from jiu-jitsu. And this is what I'm at the blue belt blues at the moment, where you kind of I'm looking, is the gym right for me? Am I getting enough teaching? Do I need to go somewhere else to keep evolving? You know, and I think it's just we put too much into it. You know, at the end of the day, it should be fun, but it should teach you. I mean, I know that I know probably 100% more than a guy try to throw fists in the street. But in my head, I'm constantly thinking, no, I need more, I need to train and stuff like that. And that's where it comes back to. It's like anybody with a bit of training, you don't look for it, because it teaches you that you don't need to, and it removes your aggression. We have a guy in our club who just put a post up on his Facebook the other day, and he was saying about he's a year into his, coming away from drink. He tried to commit suicide. He was constantly fighting, and now he's doing jiu-jitsu. It's calmed him down. It's made him happier than he could ever believe he could be. Emotionally, he's back on track. He's made some great friends from it, and I think it's amazing what jiu-jitsu can do. I mean, is that the things you enjoy from coaching?
Yeah,
you get to see these transformations.
Yeah, I do, and I mean that's part of why I absolutely love making videos too. I mean, you'll get there's definitely moments where the comments and everything on videos can be complete just train wrecks. You know, you get the guys that just, like we talked about before, that are obvious street fight experts and will tell you exactly, well, this won't work because of this reason, whatever. Overwhelmingly, most of my comments are pretty positive, and it's like, hey coach, you watching your video helped me to get past this position I couldn't escape, or I caught somebody that's a higher rank than me because I watched this video. I mean, things like that are really cool, and it makes me really happy that, to whatever degree, some people completely over exaggerate, and it's like, this was just a life altering video. This was this phenomenal. I'm going to do whatever I can to come and train with you, and I want to be but whatever degree it is, I can tell her if I had any positive impact on a person at all through the vehicle of jiu-jitsu, then it was a great thing for me, and just like if I have a student in the classroom that, I see that I'm having a positive impact on their life, just because, and it's not me, it's just because I'm sharing this thing. And that's the whole reason I teach jiu-jitsu, is that it's had some of the most positive impacts on my life. It's given me a vehicle and a tool with which to understand reality, even whenever reality gets very chaotic. It gives me the ability to understand how to handle situations that might otherwise be overwhelming in life if I didn't have that that metaphorical tool set from jiu-jitsu to be able to help myself with. And so if I can share that somehow with somebody, or if I can like be somebody's like connective like bridge into learning that art that can do that same kind of thing for them, then that's a responsibility that I take very seriously, and it's something that I never lose sight of the fact that I'm very grateful and privileged to be able to do that for people. Because I think when as soon as you're not grateful anymore, you need to just hang it up. You need to move on to something else. Like if you're not doing this out of gratitude, then you're not doing it for the right reasons.
I mean, you've certainly got a massive fan base, and it's very well deserved. I mean, your videos are so in depth, but you can tell that you're doing it because you want to see people succeed. You want to help people that you're coaching and your internet fan base. But I mean, do you ever struggle like with imposter syndrome, with like worries about your coaching and stuff like that? How, for some, because you're doing it in front of a camera and you're not getting like instant feedback like you would in a class, how do you adapt to doing it in things like YouTube and building a business from that side of things as well? Like how have you adapted to it? Because you seem so calm and relaxed in front of the camera, but have you ever worried about it? Did you struggle when you first started doing YouTube?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't recommend people go back and watch my early videos, but I leave them on there if they want to. But they were horrible. I'll still go back once in a while and I'll start to watch one and I just have to turn it off. It's embarrassing. Like it's because I didn't, it was like you're saying, I'm talking to a camera and it's very uncomfortable. It's very unnatural. And I have no cadence to my voice. I'm trying to explain something and I'm thinking while I'm trying to explain it. It's just bad, man. I mean, so, like my channel, my YouTube channel has taken off really successfully over about the last 2 years or less. If you really look at the trajectory of it, about 2 years ago, I had about 6,000 subscribers to my channel, and that was after having this channel for almost 10 years. So, because I started when YouTube was a baby, I mean, YouTube like came out 2006 or something, maybe 2005, 2006. I started my channel about 2006 or 7. And I would make a video now and again, and I got a little more serious, a little more regular with it. But then something happened a couple years ago. I put out a couple of videos. One was on solo drills and one was on mount escapes. And my channel just, it kind of blew up. And I started getting...
mount escape.
Like, yeah, I mean, and that I'm really proud of that video. And I didn't think, though, it was anything special. And honestly, I sat there with my finger on the upload button after, I got it, put together, and I was like, I don't think anybody's gonna like give a shit about this. I don't even know if I want to upload it, And the solo drills video is the same way. I was like, I wouldn't watch this. Like, I don't know if this is even worth it, but I need to upload a video if I'm going to be consistent for the week. So here we go. I'm just going to upload it. And it just, those took off and they got shared by the right pages and stuff like that, and got the right notice and started kind of spreading around. And since then, it's been between like 5,000 to 10,000 new subscribers every single month since then, and now it's like 120,000 or something now, and it's just, it blows me away every day because people tell me things like, and I don't want to sound like a douchebag and say, well, people tell me I'm this or that, but the compliments that people give me, it's humbling. I don't know if that's the right word, but it is. It makes me feel so grateful that I'm doing something positive to share the way that I'm sharing. It's getting across the right way to whatever degree. So I'm happy and I'm grateful for that,
So for people like yourself who are doing a channel or they're bringing out their own product or whatever it is, how did you learn to stop comparing yourself to others? Is it going back to what you said earlier, that you just think do your own stuff and just let it come, the cream will rise to the top? Or, did you even think about what other people were doing or compare yourself or look at what they were doing for ideas, or did you just do it and just put it out there?
There's, on no level am I going to try to act like I don't constantly compare myself to other people and look at what other people are doing. I completely still do that. Like I set these little like kind of private benchmarks for myself. Like I'll look at somebody's channel and just be like, oh, they've got this many subscribers. I wonder if like I can pass that many subscribers before they can reach this number. It's like just to have like little competitive benchmarks for myself. And then no way does I have no misgivings and no misconceptions that in any way does that mean that my quality is higher than theirs. I absolutely know that. I understand that. Like Keenan Cornelius, there's nothing about my jiu-jitsu that is better than his for what he does. Like I think he's one of the greatest jiu-jitsu like people in the world. And honestly, not even just gi and no gi sports jiu-jitsu. I think that he has such a comprehension of the totality of jiu-jitsu. I think he's absolutely brilliant. I love watching his stuff and everything else. But I like set a goal for myself a couple months back. I'm like, I wonder if I can beat him to 115,000 subscribers. It's like, and so I was sitting there watching, and like the day that I passed him up, and I was like, yes, I did it. And it's like it doesn't mean anything. It's just like something to try to keep me motivated to keep doing some things. But going back to like your actual question though, like I have a lot of people tell me, oh man, you just got to make sure just to ignore those negative comments. You got to ignore those people who are, putting down what you're doing and this and that. I'm like, if I did that, then I think I would have failed a long time ago. I don't ignore anything, especially not the negative stuff. I'll respond to a negative comment in a heartbeat, and I won't respond in a overly negative way or argumentative way. I'm not going to get super emotional about it any more than I have to. But for me, if somebody puts a negative comment on one of my videos, I'm going to go in and I'm going to address that. I'm going to do it as politely and professionally as possible, not with the intention that I'm going to change that person's mind about what they said, but I want other people that might see that comment. I want them to see how I interact with that person who's commenting like that about the topic. That's for other people. It's not for them. If somebody says this is bullshit, would never work in a fight, well, I'm going to address that and say, well, this actually has worked in a fight. I wouldn't show it if I didn't have some kind of evidence, either personal or empirical from other sources that, and then I'll try to give sources of why and when this has worked in a fight and what considerations have to be made so that people see that I've thought this stuff out. And I don't just go in and say, hey, here's my phone, record this video real quick. I'm going to make some shit up on the spot and just like, try to get a video out of it. That's not really what I do. I make sure I try to be careful and contextualize everything as well as I can to be able to say, this is when this is a valuable technique. This is when it's going to work. This is when it has worked. And these are the details that are going to help it work for you, But no, I definitely listen to what other people have to say. And I try just to like deliver things the way that I can deliver them. I deliver the video as like, hopefully like the way that I would want to watch it and learn the information. People say I talk a lot, like way too fast and throw out too much stuff at one time, but sometimes, but I like, that's what that rewind button's for. Like, watch it again.
I mean, to me, that's actually good because it's like when you learn the curriculum. The first time, it's far too much information. You just get the bare essentials. But then you watch it the second time, you pick up something else. Then you watch it again, or, as the second time you start seeing a movement that you never noticed, or a way you move your hand in a certain way, and you notice these little small components.
Yeah.
And then you listen to like into what you're saying, and you pick up another thing, and you implement that, and then another thing, and it's how I learn jiu-jitsu, and I'm finding when I come back to your video, no matter what level I'm at, I'm getting so much from it. I'm learning so many different things. I can watch one of your videos 50, 60 times and learn something new. Sorry, these notifications. I hate my computer sometimes. So, what do you think people... Like, because you're doing this, you're coaching, you've got a child, you've got a relationship. What are people should be doing in addition to this? You get these guys that come out with, you should be meal prepping, taking supplements. You should be visualization, recording your sessions on a notepad. You should be doing like meditation, visualization, acupuncture. What else should a guy be doing? Is strength training worth it? Is there any supplements you should be taking? Do you have a sort of an overall philosophy on recovery away from the mat?
Yeah, I think it has to be fairly individual. I think that I don't think that I don't believe there's a recipe for everyone. I think that there's a lot of people who can, they need a lot extra, like they need to watch their diet more closely. They need to get more, they need to get the right amount of sleep. They need to supplement their training with strength and conditioning a lot more. They need to, watch their nutrition and all that. I think the biggest thing though, and jiu-jitsu helps with this so much because you learn about yourself so much. It's like I go in and I have a bad day at training. It's like, well, why did I have a bad day? It's like, well, what did I eat the day before, and what did I eat the before I practiced? What's my sleep pattern been like? How much stress do I have? Now, so if that's impacting my training, and I want to remedy that because I want to get the most out of my training that I can, then I need to go back and kind of like take note of those behaviors. And so I think that, the biggest thing that I would say as far as health and nutrition and training and everything else is like, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And how can I feel the best while I'm trying to do that? Because my training is not going to be the same as somebody who's going to compete in the next Pan Ams or Worlds. It's I have a little different goals set than that, but I do want to get the most out of my training, the most benefit. So I know that if I don't get the right amount of sleep, I know that if I eat too much garbage, I know that if I'm having higher levels of stress that I can't necessarily immediately remedy, then I'm going to have to watch those other aspects of my life that are going to be the most helpful. If you're having higher levels of stress that you can't eliminate right away, you better watch your sleep, you better watch your nutrition, you better watch your physical exercise. If you want to optimize any one of those areas, those other areas have to they have to be supportive of that. As far as specific things that I think that can be beneficial to people, I'm one of those CBD nuts that you see floating around. I'm a big proponent of that. I don't eschew marijuana use. I don't smoke marijuana. I don't use any marijuana products, but I've seen other people who it actually helps in therapeutic ways. I think it's something you better learn about, and you need to really learn about and everything like that. As far as, supplements go, that's, we could get into another 2 hours about that. There's just so much, with that. I don't think, necessarily that being, keto is right for everybody, that being a vegan is right for everybody, that being any dramatic diet is right for anyone. I think most people eat too much, in my opinion, over here in the States anyway. I think that we could do a little better, just watching our caloric intake in general and watching those macros over the micros. But again, these go so in depth because I've put a lot of thought into it just for myself, but I've seen a lot of other garbage information out there that's treated as this is the panacea to the end all be all diet for everybody that wants to be an athlete or wants to perform optimally. There's so much.
Because this is what it almost disappoints me in some way when I get to interview the likes of yourself, is there's so many things I want to cover, but to put it into an hour or 2 hours, it's difficult. Because this is why I always say I would love to have you on again, because we've barely touched the surface and we're almost at an hour and 40 odd minutes, and I'm really aware of how much of your time I'm taking up. But I can listen to you talk for hours. I can watch your videos for ages. This is why I always recommend your videos, and it's almost like I can't say more of a bigger compliment than that. No,
that means a lot to me. That's a huge compliment, and that's not lost on me at all. That when I hear something like that, I can't tell you the kind of feeling that gives me. That's fantastic to hear.
Because we've all got the same 24 hours, and to use time up, I think, is the biggest thing, is to have somebody come and ask you a question, even if it's a new white belt. I get a kick out of that, or when you see somebody's taking the time to write an email and all you get is positive comments, I can see. You get the odd arsehole here and there, but it would be life without them.
Sure.
But well, I'll wrap it up just now. I mean, I've got a couple of questions to finish off, but we definitely got to have you back on and really go into different things. As long as you've enjoyed yourself and want to come back on, obviously.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It doesn't feel like it's been as long as it has. It feels like we've just been on here a few minutes. Yeah.
Well, if you're really feeling brave, I can introduce something I haven't had in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I used to call them the fast break questions, where they were kind of, say these are like, I throw out prompts and you just answer a few words that come into your mind.
Okay.
So, for example, if you close your eyes and think back to childhood, what meal sums up your childhood for you?
That's interesting. Probably spaghetti. I was a poor kid. Spaghetti, grilled cheese, things like that.
Maybe not together, but I get you, right?
Right. Yeah, different meal settings, but yeah, things that were easy to feed a whole family for relatively cheap. So yeah, not the healthiest food in the world, but prepared with love.
And that's all it takes. Sometimes it's like, your mother's lasagna or like spaghetti bolognese. It's the things you remember. What's a guilty pleasure of yours?
Guilty pleasure as far as like food or entertainment or what?
Something that you'd be ashamed. Usually, is there a song that you love that you cringe if the guys in the gym heard?
Yeah, probably. I was let's see. Just recently, I was like thinking, man, I don't know a song I like better than this Nicki Minaj song that's out right now, and it was like what's it, Megatron, and yeah, I was listening to it, and I'm like, I'm really getting into the song, and it's not like music I typically listen to, but it's like and then probably like Taylor Swift, a lot of music that like my daughter listens to that I probably wouldn't naturally listen to, so a lot of the like popular like female artists that are around right now, but it's guilty pleasure probably because like I've grown an appreciation of it, like from I guess appreciation's a weird word, but being exposed to it, my daughter listening to it and everything, and seeing it make her happy and get into it maybe. So that, and then Hamilton the musical, that's another guilty pleasure. Slightly guilty. I'm not too ashamed of that. I like that musical. Yeah,
it's a good choice. If would you say that you're the kind of man now that you would want your daughter to date when she gets older, or when you're going to let her date, shall we say? Because she's about 18 now.
She's not quite 16. She's a teenager, but she's still a little younger. But she is, she does have a boyfriend and stuff, and I can't think of who I would want her to date. I would say hell no, I wouldn't want her to date someone like me, just because I know me and I know all the I know all the darkest parts of me. I'm a very, I know myself inside and out. I don't know who would possibly be perfect enough for me to approve of dating her, but I don't think I would want her to date someone like me.
So, well, my sister's married, but she's got 3 kids, and there's 2 nephews, but the last one was a niece. And Isla's a force to be reckoned with, but I now start thinking, who's good enough to marry? Who's good enough for her and stuff like that. And I wanted when she had the first one, I was very I wanted to develop myself and improve to get to a point where I was good enough for them. I wanted to be the uncle that they loved to see, the one that gave them inspiration or motivated them to be better.
That's a great goal.
Uncle. Right now, I'm doing jiu-jitsu because they always batter me as well. They're only like 5 and 7, but like I use my jiu-jitsu on them when it's like I'm the tickle monster and they're the leopards jumping off the couch onto you and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
The fact that you seem to have a very good connection with your daughter, and what advice would you give to new dads or like stepdads and things like that? How would what have you learned from being a parent?
Whew, man, loads. There's lots of elements to that. The biggest thing is being patient. That goes probably the longest. Be patient and be funny. I think the quality time that you spend with your kid laughing and having a good time, you obviously have to instill discipline. You obviously have to, give a structured environment. You have to teach them. You have to make sure they're doing things responsibly. But, you're just be patient. Decide if how you're feeling like you're wanting to chastise their behavior, or how you're wanting to discipline them, or how you're wanting the instinct that you're feeling in that emotional moment from their behavior, if it's really worth it, and could it be channeled in a better way, that's the hardest thing. It's really the hardest thing, because you want to be everything to that person, because it's a part of you, that this is a part of your heart, and there's such an emotional response there, and I can go on a lot of different directions. So I think just making sure that you choose those words wisely, you choose those behaviors wisely. There's a lot of damage that can be done, and there's a lot of connection that can be built. So be patient. Think about your words very wisely. And your actions very wisely.
And since you've become a father, has anything your parents done, have you been able to understand it or make peace with it, or kind of see from their point of view where you've maybe never been able to before?
Partly, yeah. I think, there's I think two ways that you learn from your parents. You learn in the positive regards what they did that you found you thought was beneficial, that you were like, yeah, I'm gonna have that kind of behavior, I'm gonna have that kind of attitude, I'm gonna do those kind of things whenever I have a kid. And then the other aspect of it is like, I'm never gonna be like that when I'm a father, whenever I'm a mother, or whatever. Whenever I have a child, I'm never gonna act that way that my parents did with me. And I mean, I think there's things on both ends of that. Right now, like I have a long distance relationship, and this is the thing that I've been kind of struggling with, because I would move from my town to my girlfriend's town in a heartbeat, like right now. But my daughter's here, and as long as my daughter's living here, and I can have like immediate access to seeing her and be able to see her frequently and have that time with her, I wouldn't sacrifice that for anything. And so that keeps me here. Now, seeing that wasn't necessarily the situation whenever I was a child, like that wasn't the top consideration. I don't understand that still, and I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. But it's just something that kind of like was in opposition to the parental behavior that I saw when I was a kid. There's other things that I don't want to, in the chance that my parents listen to this podcast, I don't want to say like I learned from watching the mistakes of my parents, but there were definitely a lot of those that I swore I would not repeat whenever I had a kid. And some of them I've still made mistakes, plenty. I've made a lot of mistakes, but some things I'm still doing pretty good. I've got a pretty decent track record on some areas still. So
yeah, it's almost, it makes you kind of think and go, that's why I was being annoying with shit then, and because I kind of understand. I've got to be a parent now to like my nephews and that, and it's like that. I remember things that I said that caused an argument, and I'm like, okay, I'm definitely never going to do that with them, and I catch myself like, and I can give them back. I'm not, but they look to me as for inspiration and understanding the world, and that scares me, to be honest. But it makes you want to be a better person, yeah. So if you absolutely had to sum up your life in a movie or a song title, what would you pick?
Whew, goodness. Just the title alone. Wow. I've never thought about that.
It could be your sex life.
Yeah, yeah. That would be very different. That would probably be like the Crying Game or something. I don't know. No.
As long as it's not gone in 60 seconds.
There's so much potential for movie titles in that. That's a pretty tough one, man. I could probably come up with a great one if you give me about 30 minutes, but on the spot, I don't know. I guess I could kind of cheat it and say say like the one that like has the most like impact as far as like the sound bites or scenes or anything would probably be Fight Club. It always makes me think about that, but that's a weird movie title for titling my life, but that's kind of the vein. I don't know. I have to think about that one. We'll edit back in like the perfect title, and I'll explain why.
Well, we could do that for round 2 as well. That could be the homework.
Yes, yeah. So, I'm gonna definitely like spend the rest of the night thinking about that.
Well, here's another one for you. If you were sitting at a dinner table and you had 5 empty seats or 6 or whatever, you could pick anybody to fill those seats. Now they can be alive or dead, real or fake, somebody that you've wanted to meet, somebody famous. It could be somebody that's had a positive message to you that really motivated you when you were younger. Who would you give those seats to? This is like your ideal dinner party.
Wow. I'm sure I'd probably change my mind several times. I think I would like to
it's a nightmare, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because once those seats are filled, and I'm like, oh shoot, I should have picked this person. Let's see. Probably just to aim on the high end. Let's sit down Jesus in one of those seats. Let's do that. Then I think I would like to have a sit down conversation with Rickson Gracie. That would be obviously, as a jiu-jitsu guy, that'd be a good one to go with. I think. Man, so many historical figures you could go with. Just keeping it to living people. Well, I guess recently deceased, probably Stephen Hawking would be a good one to sit there. Albert Einstein, assuming I would know anything those guys were talking about, Then I would like to get somebody in there with more of an emotional IQ than just like a intellectual IQ. So let's throw in Gandhi just to round things out. How about that?
That's a good choice. I've had people coming out with all sorts, like I'm trying to think who it was. Somebody wanted Genghis Khan and Abraham Lincoln and Jesus or something. I was just kind of going, okay.
It's going to be an interesting dinner table, yeah.
Well, there's meant to be like a intellectual thing about the people you choose and if there's like emotional connections or like why you'd pick them and all this kind of stuff. But I just find it interesting to see where people's inspirations come from, and to be honest, it's great to find out more about the person away from why did you do that? Why did you write the book? Why,
Yeah.
I mean, if we came and sat with you on a night out, for example, what would you be listening to? Your favorite like podcast or a band or song? What kind of if you had to pick a night out for people listening, would it be like a rock club, or how do you kind of enjoy yourself away from the mats when you have time?
Yeah, I mean, I like to go out and be in social environments. I'm a very I'm kind of weird. Most people I know, it's like, oh, I'm just a homebody. I don't like to get out in crowds, and I enjoy like live and energetic and crowded places. I like environments like that. I like to be able to talk to and to be able to hear the person that I'm with as well. But I don't mind a crowded environment as long as it's like a relaxed and happy place. Not full of aggressive behavior or anything like that. So sitting down in a nice restaurant, or even even like a pub or something, is would be a good enjoyable time if I'm with the right company of people. Going to something like a concert or something, that would be nice, but I like to be able to talk with the people that I'm around, and be able to really like focus on them and spend time with them and hear what they have to say and be able to communicate myself as well as possible. So yeah, I mean, something just kind of relaxed but social.
I appreciate you saying pub rather than bar.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking about that. That was a deliberate word choice because I was like, that it would probably be more appropriate to say pub than bar. So yeah, or club.
So where's the evolution of Knight Jiu-Jitsu going? What do you want to achieve? Are you happy doing the videos and the content and stuff you're doing now? I mean, do you have plans to do anything? Because I can only see you getting bigger and bigger and more successful because you're just giving the content that people want, but you're not building some bubble of like that you're better than everybody. You're just a lovely guy giving awesome content and helping people succeed. But what's the overall mission for the brand for you? Do you have a goal in mind, or just to keep doing what you're doing?
I think that the goal has to be. I'm not great about setting concrete goals. I'm better about setting flexible ones, and I think it has to be flexible because, I don't know how sustainable what I'm doing is. I mean, I'm just making videos and sharing like techniques and concepts and strategies and things like that, and trying to relate it to people in the best way possible. And I want to keep doing that. I want to keep on like sharing everything that I have that I think is useful with people the best way that I can. So, I don't have any intention to stop doing what I'm doing, and only to do as much more of it as I can. So, I've done things like, just trying to diversify like where people can get, access to my teaching and everything. I started recording my classes and putting it on my Patreon page, and started the Patreon page so that, honestly, because people like told me to. Like, I got to where I was getting all these comments about, people should really be paying for this. Like, people who are watching this stuff for free, and they're saying I should be paying for this. And I was like, well, okay, maybe I should make something where I can make a few dollars out of this too, rather than just putting advertisements on YouTube and, making kind of some, this chump change, but it's definitely not like sustainable for a career, out of that. I want to be able to go and teach my classes and my private lessons at my academy here in town. I want to still travel and do seminars, and keep on keeping a steady stream of those coming in. I have people that have pushed me to start affiliations and networking and stuff, and I have a couple of a few places underneath me now that are affiliates for Knight Jiu-Jitsu that are actually like students of mine, and they're running centers that are affiliated with Knight Jiu-Jitsu. I do close work with the Fit to Fight brand, and Knight Jiu-Jitsu has been kind of like partnered with Fit to Fight for the Jiu-Jitsu program in there. So just diversifying out as much as possible, but still being manageable. One of my biggest goals is to be able to get some help because like I'm doing a lot of stuff just by myself, and so my time is spread very thin. And on a daily basis, I'm like, man, I really wish I had somebody that could field this aspect or that aspect for me. But at the moment where I'm at, it's kind of like by the time that I could explain and train someone on how to field this content or this area for me, I could just go ahead and do it myself. So it's not completely worth it, But that's the goal.
Yeah, you're like with me, where you're kind of... But the time it would take to kind of like show somebody how to edit a video or whatever is easier just doing it yourself. And,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I mean, that's nowhere near the level like that you are, so I can't imagine how busy you are at the moment.
Well, yeah, I keep my time is spread, pretty thin across the board, but it's, and that's I don't mind it though. I mean, like that's the thing. Like I get to moments where I'm like, man, I got to do this, and I got to do that, I got to do this and that. And it's like I keep reminding myself every chance that I get to stop using that I have to or I've got to terminology. That was something that I learned a while back, and I don't remember the first place I ever heard it. But if you replace "I've got to" with "I get to," like just that shift of perspective really, really changes things. Because when you approach things negatively, like, I have to do this, I have to do that, you don't have to do anything if you want to be honest about it. I don't have to keep putting videos up. I don't have to respond to this comment or that comment. I don't have to do much of anything. And in fact, like if it's so negative of a thing that you feel compelled that you have to do it, you're compulsory being like held to the fire to do this, you should probably quit. Like honestly, I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk, like he. I like a lot of what he says, I like a lot of what he does. I like his podcast. Some of the stuff, it gets a little cloying or a little annoying sometimes, but I mean, I think I like overwhelmingly what he says and does, and I absolutely love that soundbite of him saying, stop doing shit you hate to do. Just stop. If you hate doing it, stop doing it. Like nobody, most of us don't have a gun to our head on a daily basis saying you have to work this shit job that you hate. If what makes that worth it? What really makes it worth it? Like, I think that so much of that conversation is just all up in our heads, and we're playing a false narrative to ourselves a lot of the time. And even though I feel like what I do is serious work and I really work hard and I really bust my ass a lot of times to do it, I'm doing what I love. And so it's not, I'm not being forced by anybody, and I'm choosing to do this. So I try to replace every chance I get the phrase "I've got to do this" with "I get to do this."
I love that, because it's true what you're saying. We have work to almost kill ourselves 24/7, and we're just falling into what somebody has said because it's a catchy soundbite, rather than it being something we should actually be doing. I love Gary Vee. He was the first one I ever interviewed for this. I won a competition to interview him for 15 minutes about his Crush It book.
Yes.
And it's when I cringe when I hear it back now, but just then he's so inspiring and passionate, and he just says it as it is.
Yes.
So that's like, if I could have my choices of like, be yourself and Chewy for jiu-jitsu, be like Gary Vee for entrepreneurship. I'm kind of like picking my dream team. Like,
that's great.
So what's an unusual fact about yourself that few people know? Is there anything that really surprises people when they hear, or that you don't really share very often?
Like big things that would surprise people. I don't know. I mean, I think that like, depending on who it is, a lot of people that like, you think that I'm just about this or about that. Like they, a lot of the like people who just know me from like more self-defense jiu-jitsu stuff, like don't realize like how into the sport aspect of it I am, like how much I really like and appreciate that. I mean, I think that, people tend to like carry kind of a two-dimensional view of you based on what they've seen so far. So I think that there's a lot of things that can be kind of surprising, but I don't know. I don't see a lot of things that I try to present myself in a fairly authentic manner to people. I mean, they might be surprised with like how bad my diet gets sometimes, or like how, I don't know, just something along those lines. But I don't feel like I try to portray too much like false narrative about myself. I try for authenticity as much as possible. So I don't feel like I set myself up too much for people to be taken aback by if they find out something behaviorally about me. I hope not anyway.
And how bad a diet are we talking? What's your idea of a cheat meal, or
a cheat meal?
What would we be shocked to see you eat on a sort of weekly basis?
I have a really bad addiction to chicken wings. So that's one of my biggest weaknesses, or like hot wings, chicken wings.
We're talking.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite foods too, though. I have bad sweet tooth. I try not to entertain it a whole lot, but I mean, it's bad. I remember whenever my wife at the time was pregnant with my daughter, and she had this like just craving constantly for Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and she got me hooked on it. And once the baby came, her addiction went away, and mine kind of stayed, and so I kept on.
You get the food baby.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I still can't allow myself to be around some Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I try to stay away from it because I can kill like an entire pint at a time. It's no problem. So, but
I like that. Is it?
Yeah, I try not to be too terrible with my diet. I try to keep it clean. I try to I know what I perform best when I'm eating, and how I feel best when I'm eating. So I try not to be horrible with it, but I don't get on myself like too strict about it, because I also want to enjoy life and not be miserable because I can't have my favorite foods once in a while. So I'm like I said, I'm not training for Worlds next week, so I'm gonna be a little lax with it.
Well, that's what I love about jiu-jitsu is people can be massive and still compete and win. They can be tiny, they can be thin, they can be strong, weak and that. But it's more about the technique and leverage points and, using, like, position and, like, an extended arm and a lever and all that against them. It's more about understanding the physics of it rather than actually... like who's the fittest who can get to the ball first or using a certain kind of boot and stuff like that. I'm nowhere near as good as I want to be, but I love the challenge and the evolution of it and how you can always get better and better, but then there's always a escape to the technique you've just learned, then there's an escape to the escape of the escape, then there's a block to, it never seems to end.
Yeah, that's it exactly right there. I mean, it's a complete, like, constantly evolving thing too. It's just when you think that, like, this is the best way to do something, or this is the highest form of it or something. I always see people too. It's like you see this person who's like, man, who could possibly beat this person? And then someone comes along and easily beats them, and then beats everybody else for a while. And it can be an overwhelming thing. It can definitely be an overwhelming thing because it's like, man, I've got so much to learn. I have so far to go. But I mean, once you realize like that, it's it's cliche, but if you fall in love with the process rather than the result, then you're going to be a lot happier.
Because I think Keenan was saying that recently about how everybody's loving like the lapel guard just now, but eventually that's just going to become a standard thing that it's going to be trained heavier in most academies. So suddenly now people are going to have to step up and be different to defeat that.
Yeah.
It's strange how people focus on a new thing rather than just the fundamentals, the basics that got everybody to the party.
Yeah. I'm of the opinion that it's both. I mean, like, as long as you have a solid foundation and a solid, like, understanding of the fundamentals, and you have the time, then, there's nothing wrong with looking at the most trendy new thing out there, like if you watch, I was noticing watching the Worlds this year, like how ubiquitous the use of lapel guard was, and everybody was playing it, and it's like, man, that even more so, not that it hasn't been played plenty in the past at different events like that, but it was so much more pronounced to me. And I'm sure that Keenan was probably one of the biggest factors in that, and the work he's done with that and the information he's released on that topic. But it's going to wax and wane. I mean, you see people now like doing things that have been around forever. I was talking to someone about that the other day. I remember Rodrigo Gracie showing us virtually everything in the Danaher approach to the leg lock system, what the Danaher death squad is doing. It's because he was training up there around the same time in New York at the Renzo Gracie Academy with all those guys whenever this was all being formulated and developed. Now, Danaher may have a more articulate way of expressing it and has organized it more systematically, but the information on a technical level has been around, for a long time. That's how most of jiu-jitsu is, I think, But so, everything can be kind of broken down to a fundamental level, and I think that as long as people keep that in sight, then they're doing fine, And I think as long as people don't get too caught up in like, well, people should be doing this more, people should be doing that more. I think that should is a very dangerous statement, or a very dangerous word.
I see that the whole time is like my coach, especially, he's fallen into that trap of this is the best place, the headquarters to start. Everybody should use this as their landing page to start from, and it's a move that's set up for somebody that's smaller, faster, got flexibility. And as a big guy, I'm sitting thinking, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work for me. But there's so many different aspects of jiu-jitsu. It should be a case of, well, this will suit you if you're this. If you're not, what about this? Go and try this. Go and try. And it's there's something in jiu-jitsu for everybody. So I mean, I'm almost gutted to say it, but I would definitely will have you back on and really get into this again, because I've had so much fun doing this. But for people who've been listening, what do you want this to be? Like, what do you want the message from this? If they had to take one thing from it, or like an overall message from this interview? What do you want them to take before the second one?
I don't know. I think the thing I keep coming back to whenever I think about things like that, or somebody asks me something about that, and maybe just because of the environments that I find myself like participating in conversationally, I think people just need to just lighten up and enjoy the process. You know, I mean, like if you're training, think about why you started. You know, I think about why you started doing what you're doing, and what made you, if you love it, what made you fall in love with it, and don't lose sight of that. And don't get too caught up and too tribal in your mentality of it, and thinking that just because you're doing it is the best way out there, and that you should be open-minded. You should be at the same time open-minded, but also critical, of what other people are doing and what you're doing yourself. But ultimately, just people need to lighten up and enjoy the process and have a good time, and because that's ultimately what's going to keep people training longer. If they're having a good time, they're going to want to keep on doing it. If you're forcing yourself to do it, you're miserable through the whole process of it, then even your training is going to suffer for that, and it's not going to have the same quality. And then the quality suffers when you're doing it, and then eventually you're so miserable you're going to quit doing it. So just make sure that you constantly find something to love about it, and you don't forget about that. But that's what I would probably say.
No, I love the way that you can sort of articulate what is a very waffly question from me, and you kind of pick a great answer. In a way, you pull together like a lot of different factors, and you put it into a very kind of well thought out answer. We definitely got to do number 2 soon. I've definitely got to have you on again and really get into different aspects of training, coaching, and things like that. But for people who want to find awesome, well, for people who want to find out more about you, to come and train with you, to watch your videos, connect with you on social media, that sort of thing, how can they find you? How can they get in connection with you?
I try to make sure that I try to answer every message that I can, even comments like that. And this keeps me pretty busy, but any like messages and comments I get through YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, anywhere on any of the socials. Typically, if you look up Knight Jiu-Jitsu or Eli Knight, you're gonna come across me. My YouTube channel is Knight Jiu-Jitsu. My Instagram is Knight Jiu-Jitsu. My Facebook, there's a personal page for Eli Knight, and there's one of those public figure pages or whatever it is for Eli Knight and Knight Jiu-Jitsu. Anything like that, people can get a hold of me. I have a Patreon page where I put up exclusive content that's not just the free stuff that you see on YouTube. And for that matter, on my YouTube, you can join as a paid member too, and I put up like exclusive content that other people don't get to see for free, just to have some things that people. It's a little more involved teaching, because it's what I'm actually teaching in the classrooms and at seminars and stuff like that. Rather than me putting out a 5 or 10 minute video, it's me teaching full classes. So, but through any of those social media aspects, like that, people can direct message me and get in contact with me like that.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time. Keep trying to hit that next level in your life.